Hello, my name is Ava Wall, and I'm a writing tutor here at the Bach Learning Center at Cascadia College. Today, I'll be taking you through a short presentation on integrating quotes. This presentation is going to be using the MLA format, which is the format commonly used in English classes in academia. So, what exactly is quote integration? It's a necessary skill for all college English students. No matter what class you're taking or what essay you're writing, this is a necessity and something you'll need to be able to do and something that you're going to work on improving. Simply put, quote integration is taking the words of others directly and putting it into your own work. So you're going to take quotes from sources that you've compiled for your research, and you're going to take them and put them directly into your work. But you must incorporate them using specific grammatical rules, and they must always be cited. So you must always have a work cited, and you must always have in-text citations, as you'll see throughout this presentation. So first, before we dive into a few examples, take time to reflect on your experience with quote integration. How do you feel about it? How do you feel about your ability to integrate quotes and to cite them correctly? What don't you like about using quotes? And also, what can you improve about your integration techniques? Maybe you want your sentences to have a better flow. Maybe you want to make sure that you're citing correctly. Try to keep these in mind and try to work on improving them. Keep on the lookout for new tips throughout this presentation. Now we're going to go through a few examples of common types of sources that you'll need to integrate, and also in-text citations that you'll need to use. So first we have books. So this can be a novel, a novella, a nonfiction book. I use The Great Gatsby in this circumstance. So we're going to look at two instances of quote integration. In this first instance, we use the quote at the end of the sentence by swiftly integrating it. So take a moment to read that first example. You can pause if you'd like. So in this first example, we first start by mentioning the name of the book, The Great Gatsby. When mentioning the name of a book, you always want to do italics, not quotations. Books should always be in italics when mentioned during an essay. Then we mention the author. The in-text citation is always in parentheses at the end of the sentence, and in this case, it's the page number. When you're citing books in text, you need the author and the page number. In this case, we've already mentioned the author in the sentence in our lead-in, so we don't need to mention it in parentheses. So we only need to mention the page number. In terms of integration, see how it's been smoothly integrated into the sentence. The is not capitalized at the beginning of the quote, and it flows as if it's part of the sentence. In the second example, and you can take a moment to read that, this acts as if we've already been discussing the book, The Great Gatsby, because we've mentioned a character here, Nick, and we're talking about how he's reflecting. So we're placing the quote in context. So if you've already been talking about a book or an article or something, this is a good way to introduce a quote. In this case, we have a colon, and then we have the entirety of the quote. There are only the pursued, the pursuing, the busy, and the tired. This is another useful way to integrate a quote. If you don't want to swiftly and smoothly put it into a sentence, you can always separate it using a colon, so you can put in the entirety of the quote. Because we didn't mention either the page number or the author in our lead-in sentence, we have to put that in parentheses at the end. So the parentheses is Fitzgerald 79. Our second example is looking at articles. So journal articles, news articles, magazines, scholarly articles. Take a moment to look at our first example. Just like a few of the examples last time, or the first example last time, This is smoothly integrated into your sentence as if it's part of your own words. The only necessary parenthetical information in this case is the author. So when you're citing articles, your in-text citation is always the author. In the second example, we also include the title of the article, which is very helpful, although usually not necessary in your in-text citation. I would recommend mentioning the title of the article in your lead-in, or if you're already discussing it, then mention it earlier in your paragraph or in your essay. In this second case, we mentioned the author in the lead-in, and so we don't need to have a parenthetical in-text citation at the end of the sentence. You can also notice in this second example that the actual quote is placed in the middle of the sentence instead of at the end, which is another way you can integrate quotes as long as it flows neatly in your sentence. So the quote doesn't always have to be at the end or the beginning. It can be in the middle as long as it makes logical and grammatical sense. Next, we've got scripts and audio. So that could be transcripts or a podcast. In this case, I've chosen the podcast, Fresh Air. And here in this case, we're not directly integrating a quote. We're taking several quotes formatted directly from the transcript. And we're putting this in following our lead-in, which contains a colon. So take a moment to read through this. You can see how it's formatted a specific way with the names of those speaking in all caps, followed by colons. This is an easy way to format when you're integrating a quotation from a script, because you can put in the entirety of the quote or quotes with this format. Notice that at the end, we have to put our parenthetical information, which is the timestamp. Because if something is audio, like a podcast or a film, we have to put the timestamp in. So this applies to both video and audio. You can mention the timestamp in your lead-in and not in the parentheses, but in this case, it's mentioned in the parentheses. If you're doing a play, there would be slightly different formatting. And for your citation, you'd have to do the author of the play, as well as the act, scene, and line numbers. But you probably won't be utilizing plays in your essays that much. Next, we've got long quotes. So sometimes you come across a quote, like an entire paragraph, and you don't want to sample a part of it. You want to use all of it. You can't somehow curve it down or integrate it into a sentence. In that case, you're going to format it like this. Take a moment to read through it. So in this case, we're going to take the quote as if it's an entire paragraph, and we're going to set it apart from your sentence. We're going to indent it by an entire margin, so you can see that it's clearly separate from your lead-in sentence, which includes a colon. And then at the end, you're still going to need that typical in-text citation, whether it's from an article or a book. In this case, it's from a book, so you're going to need that page number because you've already included the author in your lead-in. Here. So next, this is a resource called the Purdue OWL. This is the best resource for understanding in-text citations and quote integration. So you can go here if you want any more information. It has a lot more examples than I've given you right now. If you have more questions, you can also come to visit the Bach Learning Center at Cascadia College, and you can ask the writing tutor that's on shift there. Another good website is called Scribbr, that's SCRIBBR.com, which has a lot of writing help as well. Take some time to reflect on what you've learned. What techniques will you implement in future writing? How will you continue to improve your quote integration? How can you improve your sentence structure? And remember to check yourself when you're doing in-text citations to make sure they're correct. Think about your confidence and how you can continue growing it as you continue integrating more quotes throughout your essays. Now, it's time to take a look at this quote and this integration. Take a moment, you can pause if you'd like, to figure out whether or not this is a correct quote integration. All right, in this case, it is a correct quote integration. We mentioned an article, start Googling, let's talk in quotations, which is always the proper way to mention an article. Whenever you're mentioning an article or citing an article and you're citing the name, you need to use quotations, not italics, whereas a book, as I mentioned earlier, is always in italics. So in this case, it's an article, and so yes, it's in quotations. Then we mentioned the author. Then we have a smooth lead-in, as if it's part of our sentence, at the end of the sentence. So in this case, we don't need any parentheses because we've already mentioned the author, which is what we need for articles, as mentioned earlier. So in this case, this is a correct example of quote integration. What about this one? All right, in this case, this is not a correct example. While we have the title, A People's History of the United States, formatted correctly, and we also have the actual quote integrated correctly and smoothly, we forgot the parentheses. In this case, we have not mentioned the page number or the author in our lead-in, so we need to put that at the end. So in parentheses, there should be Zin and then the page number at the end. So in this case, this is incorrect and would need a little bit of editing. That's the last example I have for you today. I strongly recommend that if you're a little confused or if you want some more practice, you should look up quotes in books and articles that you found for your research and just practice integrating. Practice by doing similar examples that I've showed you today before delving into your actual essay and figuring out how to combine quotes and how to discuss them. Repetition is great practice, and continue practicing no matter what kind of essay you're writing or what class you're in, because this is something that's very, very important, and you're going to continue to improve doing this, and you're going to need to continue utilizing this skill throughout your college career. If you have any questions, please reach out to the Box Center, look at the resources I've mentioned, or you can contact one of the tutors. I hope that this has been a helpful presentation. Thank you and happy writing.